Goodness gracious. Whew. Sometimes I just gotta fix the thing. Sometimes I just gotta fix the thing. How you folks doing, man? Ladies and gentlemen, team, folks, people, y'all. I love the nightlife. I like the boogie. Sometimes I have to straighten the camera up though. Yeah, right about there. That's I like being able to see just a little bit over here. Got the sticky note wall back there. Oh goodness, Chris Courtney here, New Pragmatic. It's a lovely morning here. Just hanging out with you, waiting for CouchBot to fire. The bots have been weird this morning. For those of you who are watching the live stream, which by the way, I've been trying to clean up Discord. A lot of times in the first thing in the morning when CouchBot fires, it will like drop CouchBot into the stream, and then when YouTube processes the live stream, it then will post again, and then when I chop things down and clean things up a bit, it'll post again. So I've been going through and deleting 2 of those posts, throughout the day. Obviously, let them stand while they're actually happening, but just trying to clean that general channel up because there, frankly, has been a lot more conversation over there as of late. Just general conversation, people talking. So I don't want the big giant CouchBot posts to get in the way there. Just making sure for a second the mic's working, and it is. Yep, it's functioning. That's always a nightmare. I've done that. I think the thing where I forget to plug in the mic. I've done that twice in the past year, and each time it's painful enough to cause little panic attacks. Because there's no script here. There is no script to what we do every morning. I'm here reacting specifically to your work. And speaking of that, we've got a fair number of projects this morning. I know that Luigi's in here. Katie is back in here. And then Kara has made an update, actually, to her project from yesterday. I might have goaded her just a little bit, go stretch out just a bit. Kara's so good and so talented that sometimes I don't mean to pick on my designers, but sometimes I do, because I just want to, this isn't about this is about making sure everybody's like just stretching a bit. This one thing I will say is Kara's amazing at this. Katie's the same way. I jab and push, and Eve will tell you this. We can be talking about something totally unrelated, and I just cannot help myself but to push on certain areas that I think are just standards across. A lot of times I'll see some work and I'll talk about some material. Oh yeah, in a couple of chapters you're going to come across this thing, but let's go ahead and talk about it now. And I can't help myself because I want your work to always be exceeding and growing and pushing, and because this is not there are some places where it's very much a did you check the box and did you make it through that milestone. I'm just not built to do that, and I think that's a large reason why a lot of you are here, is because I'm not going to just, oh yeah, that's good enough and let's go on to the next thing. There isn't a good enough. I'm always pushing for the next rung on the ladder, as we try to level up. Somebody the other day was asking. I sometimes get these questions on Quora, and well, you know what? Actually, I see the CouchBot's fired. So why don't I pause that for a second? I'll come back to it though. Greetings, one and all. Chris Courtney here, New Pragmatic. It is time for the feedback loop, where I take your submissions and I layer them on with sour cream. No, I give you my feedback. I was just mentioning that I got a question in Quora. Quora is website where people ask questions, and sometimes I'll take time to answer some of them. Sometimes I don't have a good grasp on what they're trying to ask. What are the types of interface design? Like, sometimes I'll get like, what are the three main types of interface design? I'm like, I have no idea. I didn't know there were three main types of interface design. I know there's a lot of interface design. Is he talking about visual, voice, and virtual? I don't know. I've never thought about it that way, but you get some interesting questions over in Quora. I digress. My point was, somebody was asking, hey, I know all these programs, but my visual designs still suck. How do I make them better? And I really do believe feedback is how, you have to do the work. I can sit here and tell you exactly what to do. I can sit back and say, okay, move the mouse or type the thing or ask the question. And at some point, it's just me kind of trying to puppet, and that's no good. That's no good. You don't need somebody to try to puppet you into place. What you need is to do some work on your own, and then get some feedback on it. And then you react to the feedback, and next time you sit down to do the work, you approach it differently. And that's the real goal of feedback. So, if you feel like, man, it's just like, how do I get this to be better? The answer is, do more work, submit it, and it's important that the feedback that you get is relatively consistent. I do think that it's good to change the source of feedback and where it's coming from. That is saying that I believe that over time it's good to shift the voices that you have participating. I don't know, that works against me at some point. At some point, that's saying, well, Chris shouldn't be the mentor forever, and that's true. That's true. I'd love to be the mentor forever, but I realize that at some point you need other voices, and as people cycle out, other people will cycle in. But the consistency of the feedback that you get. What you don't need is feedback from a few different parties, and they're all moving in different directions. At that point, you really need to be a professional, and you can kind of see through and accept certain bits of feedback and guidance, but know when to kind of put the blinders on and move forward. That's a very dangerous situation as somebody new to the industry. You need consistent feedback. Once you find your footing, and once you get to the point where you're like, okay, I can stand on my own, I can see enough, I understand when something is good, then you're at a spot where you can begin to really operate independently. All that said, let's jump into the work, because Luigi's here, Kara's back with a remix on yesterday, and Katie's here as well. So let's do this. All right, so I've got Luigi here, I've got Katie here, I've got Kara here. I'm just going to start with Kara, because what she's done, I challenged her a bit. Yesterday, she was, here's Nodo, and Nodo is the same super family, but it's utilizing a serif and a sans serif. Here's Work Sans and Merriweather, and I like these combinations are nice. There's nothing wrong with them, but I challenged her to, can you go in a direction that kind of allows you to do a little bit. What are two fonts, two typefaces that you wouldn't necessarily regularly work with, that you could do some exploration with? And she picked these. It's Rubik and Tiviraj. It's got to be like Tiviraj. I'm not entirely certain what the name of this particular font is. And I should say typeface. Font is the mechanism of delivery. Typeface is the actual thing you're looking at. I digress. So what you have here is a very versatile serif. Lots of italics, lots of Roman, lots of weights. Like very nice. It's a little quirky. To be completely honest with you. I like it at the thinner weights more so than I think it gets really quirky down here. But the whole point of this exercise, the whole point of bringing this up is to experiment, to work with things that you normally wouldn't work with. And I mentioned this to Kara because I felt like these were pretty close to one another to the point where if you zoom out, like we did yesterday, it's very hard to tell the difference between these combinations. So now as we get over here, now you can begin to see like, oh, this is a totally different set of combinations than what we had. Pairing 2 is different from pairing 3. And pairing 3 I think is well weighted, particularly the second one. It has the same overall tone to it. Like one isn't super heavy by comparison. This one's really nice as well. I do wonder if like this is -2. I wonder if it just needs a little more air to it. You get down here to -2s and 3s, -1 or just 0. Like it's just that internal spacing on that is just a little tight. But I like the labels and how those are working. It's just a very interesting typeface. It's very wide. It's got a very wide structure. Also, this one has some ligatures in it. If you look at this, you type in F. This ligature, when you type in the I, it's pretty common among the typography to have the F and the I like that. Or it shouldn't say it's common. It's common if you have ligatures to have something like that. And it's really interesting. It is one of those things that if you see that a lot, you're going to want, it's something you have to realize that, oh, this has a lot of ligatures in it. Do I like that? Here, I think here the label's getting a little horsey for use, and so here we're saying like horsey meaning awkward, but inside of a card, maybe this is not the greatest combination. This works fine. That works okay. In a button form, again, it for me with this typeface, I really like the lighters, and once you get into the extra bolds and whatnot, not so much. But I will say that I like the extra bolds when they're being applied to a label by itself. So it's not like I'm completely opposed to them. But the whole point of the exercise with Kara was just like, can we stretch out? Because we're not eliminating anything at this stage. We're just studying type. And as I say this because Kara is an experienced designer, decade of design experience. It's difficult when you have a lot of design experience to break out of the things that you commonly use. There was a period of time for years where it seemed like every project I did, I used Stag Sans. Stag was a font that I used at my job, and I decided, I'll use the sans serif version of it on side projects. And it took me a while to like break out and get away from that. And we now have so many typefaces available to us. It's a terrible habit to just fall into the Proxima Nova trap, if you will. Proxima Nova was a very popular typeface. Still popular, but it was extremely popular around 2014. and every project that was online basically used it. Okay, so again, stretch out, and I think you have a great opportunity to grow. Luigi has come back with some options here related to his color palettes, and again he's gone with the this is again it's for a food project, so it makes a lot of sense to explore in these really lush, beautiful combinations here with the melons or gourds. These are gourds. I think that's a melon, but these are gourds. Um, Here going with seafood and vegetables, just a really lovely mix. I like I really like the the complement of the blue and the orange, and that's one of the reasons I include the color wheel over here, so you don't have to close your eyes and see the colors. You can just kind of roll over and go, oh yeah, that is a compliment, or that's pretty close. Um, it's just nice to not have to look it up. Um, the analogous here of the greens, but with the complement of the yellow, um, just really lovely work. Now I'm going to come down here and shut this down just a bit on the grid so we can really see what's going on. And again, in the sandbox, and I'm saying this for everybody's sake, not just Luigi's. In the sandbox, I am not suggesting that your header looks like this or this. I'm just trying to give you some shapes to work with. The one thing I really hate when being asked to mock something up or come up with a concept is, or now this is a classic. Now test out your selections, and then you have to go create an interface to test out the selection. Like I just have an interface laying around off to the side for testing. I don't typically. I typically have to create those things from scratch, which is why I include a sandbox with some pre-made shapes so that you don't have to go looking for that stuff. You can just kind of apply the color. I like the green. I think it works pretty well. I might just go with the darker green here on the name. Yeah, we know Figma. We know I don't have all the fonts loaded. Just calm down. I do wish Figma would figure that out. Oh, you've shared this project with somebody else. Include the fonts. At least it allows me to see them. Okay. Figma's trying to skirt the line of font ownership. It's allowing me to see it, but I don't have those necessarily to use. The labels work fine here. The button's fine. There's nothing bad there. So we come over. The blues work. I really like the way that's holding up just as a word mark. This, you can kind of see how the orange would work. I'm not seeing a lot of interplay between the colors. It's like I'm either going with blue or either going with orange. I would like to see some interplay. Now here we kind of get into that a little. Although I do wonder if it's, is this a really successful usage of it? Fresh Market isn't. I could see this going the other way. I could see the blue being applied to Fresh Market, but the button itself being the light orange. Same thing here. But I guess the thing I'm looking at, and this is kind of nice actually. Just saying, and I'm gonna get rid of the color. I'm just gonna go white with the blue on the background. In this case, I would suggest having some sort of underline or something to help, because it's I can see it because I'm looking for it, that this is lighter than those, but I think it needs we talked about this during the accessibility exercises, that you need one other thing, because just the slight tone change alone isn't going to necessarily call enough attention to this to say this is the active page, or this is the thing that's being hovered on. So think about that as you're going through. You know, the biggest problem I have here is that the colors have been applied, but there's no real exploration. Like, yeah, this works, that works. These are functional. This is a little harder to get behind. The yellow gets really hard, I think, to read. This is where I would like to bring in like a Stark accessibility test to kind of look at that. These work fine. You know, one of the questions I always look at is, okay, well, how could I use these together? And I'll just I'll come through and I'll just draw a line here. So, you know, could I, and just for sake, I'll just grab that. Could I come through and do something like that? Now, I don't want to have a big blue line there, but I'm just mocking for mocking's sake. You know, is it 3? Let's zoom in. You know, is that something that we like? It is some sort of interplay between the color selections that you have. You know, I do wonder, you know, this is the orange, that's the blue. You know, one of the things I always come back to is, oh, well, what would happen if I did that instead? I realize that the other is really popular if you're following like material design. I always go with the more aggressive separation, but that doesn't make that right. It just makes it an option. But my suggestion, Luigi, is like, right now you're painting and just like, okay, I've got one color, and for this thing I'm going to use the color all the way across. Like, what are the combinations? You know, at what point, you know, is this not blue but instead green? And how does that work together? I mean, you've got the palette. Let's put it to work, and let's see if this begins to work together. There are other options in here too that you could use. You know, instead of this orange, you know, is this where we should really pull in that yellow and then come back? I just want the color. I just want a color. Oh, it's not gonna let me do it. It's not gonna let me do it. Or maybe it will. Yeah, it will. You know, but is that where you do something like that, where you pull back and now you're really beginning to push around on that palette and to see how these things interact. Like, again, you've selected the palette. Let's show, you know, now we've got the green, the orange, the dark yellow, if you will, all working together in a combination where prior to that, you know, we only had one of those things. So take a look at that. I would suggest trying to push this further. Again, this is meant for exploration. This is not meant for, okay, here's my final design. You can change all of this. The whole point is, you know, I've selected this palette. How might I put it into function? How might I put it to work? Yeah, and some of this may be, maybe I just need to give you better sandbox options. Like, I'm going to design a page for you, and now I'm going to ask that you put this to work. So again, this exercise is a bit in flux, but I definitely wanted to make sure that everybody has the concept of sandboxing and exploration before you sit down and begin designing. I think that's a really important thing to do. All right, and then Luigi, I also know that you have. I'm gonna close that one out. I'm gonna close Kara's out. Hey, there I am. I am editing a new video on presenting your work. Actually, you know, we're here with Katie. I'm gonna. This is Katie's turn in her grid assignment, and as most of you know, the grid assignment is it's pretty straightforward, but there's one thing that a lot of people don't realize, and it is this. So when you create a page, all right, and let's do that. Let's do that the right way. I'm just going to select desktop. Okay, so I've created a new desktop page. That's great, right? Right. When we come down, we can apply a grid, and that works great. And so here's columns, and you know I'm kind of recreating the margins, and she's put 12 columns on that, and we basically kind of sort of created the grid that Katie has like right over here, right? That seems simple enough. But this assignment is looking to identify the column structure used in the grid below. So broadly speaking, a 12 column design addresses most of what's present here. So you know we have the margins to the outside, and by the way, this is suitable. Like you found the edge over here. This edge is fuzzier, so you know it's like, well, where is that edge? And I think you've done a good job. Basically saying, okay, this is probably a touch zone here, and that's probably where the edge is. Defining the margin to the top is fine. Defining the margin to the bottom is unnecessary because like the page just keeps going. So I don't necessarily think you needed to do that. But over here, this is where I want to focus our thought around columns and structure, because this is a 3-column design. This is basically a 2-column design. This is a 5-column design. And how we go about identifying that comes back to how we think about creating grid structures. And what a lot of people may not realize is that if I decide to draw a rectangle onto the page, and that got really wide, so we're going to do this. Move it back. Oh, weird. Oh, that is so weird. I'm going to delete that away. I'm not even sure how I did that. Okay, so now we've drawn our rectangle on the page. Right? This rectangle, you might be thinking to yourself, okay, well, Chris, are you trying to say we should identify this grid? And the answer is yeah, I want to identify this as a 3-column section on the page. Well, there's no real way to apply a grid to a shape. But you can apply a grid to anything that is a frame. So I'm going to frame the selection. And now that I've framed the selection, I get auto layout, and I get layout grid. And if I come through, and there are no grid styles on this, so I'm just going to have to create one. I'll create a grid style. This is columns. It's going to be 3 columns. I'm always going to come in here and change the color. I'll just change the opacity so I can see it. And now what I really need to change is the gutters, because this is it's probably like a 30 pixel gutter. And now if I drag that down, I have successfully I can get rid of that rectangle. I have successfully identified that this is a 3-column design. Yes, it's within a 12-column design. But this is how we begin to think in terms of how would I code this up? It could be a 12-column design. If we were using something like Bootstrap, it could be a 12-column design. But if we were just using CSS Grid, this is a 3-column design. And then this is a 2-column design. And this is a 5-column design. So Katie, what I'd like you to do is I'd like to see you basically apply the same principles that I've just applied to figure out the width here, and layer on the grids that are present down below. Now I don't think there's anything to really do up here. This is a, you know, unless you decided to say, oh well, how many columns is in this? Well, this is a 1-column design. You know, and you can do that if you wanted to. There'll be some people that say, well, Chris, what about this little search box thing here? And the fact of the matter is, there's nothing about it that really neatly aligns. It's got some space to the outside, but I wouldn't worry about it. But this area, there's 3 areas that are visible here that do have uniquely different column structures. I'd like to see you address those. I'll leave this one on here for your review, but I will push off from there. Oh gosh, Chris, what are we doing? There's 2 parts to that assignment, and you would think that I would. Let's come back over to Discord. Oh, thanks, C2bot. C2bot it finally woke up. Well, that's weird. Oh, here we go. So that's Kara. We've seen Kara's. Luigi, we'll be right back. We're trying to get back to Katie's. I do this sometimes where I'll look at part 1 of a exercise, but I won't look at part 2. And there are 2 parts, so I need to check that out. So oh, weird. It's called Rectangle 1. That something must have gotten misnamed there. Oh. Now I know what happened. Or no, I don't really know what happened. There was totally a shape here that I think. Sorry, I'm gonna undo. I don't know if I can undo that. Let's go to version history. Preferences. This is really weird. Because I know in that grids exercise, there is this shape that's present. I'm just going to, gosh. And then I closed it again. Chris, damn it. Yeah, that's yours. So I'm going to go over here to mine, and I'm just going to grab it from the actual master. I'm not quite sure how that happened. It was something in the creation process, but as I know that was present on your page the last time I looked at it. And we'll rename this exercise part 2. That was really weird. Okay. Anyway, but we fixed it. Here, you've done a good job of utilizing rows and columns to identify that, hey, this in fact is basically Pinterest. And I can create a grid out of this, and in most cases space things up. There's a few things that like don't naturally space, but you know, rather than float this kind of in some sort of in-between zone, it's fine just to start at the next available spot that causes alignment. I would much rather you get into the habit of just saying, hey, you know what? There might be some awkward space here, but I'm gonna err on the side of alignment. And if I err on the side of alignment, the rest of it will work itself out. This is a mindset that benefits you as you work on digital products, where you cannot control all the aspects that are responsive. You know, these shapes and page sizes and whatnot, they will change. Somebody may pull it up on a tablet there, or they may pull it up on their phone. You don't know. So utilizing a grid and allowing it to take over, I think, is a great way to move forward. So this is strong. Good job. Sorry I messed it up. Not really sure how that got blown up, but we fixed it. Okay. All right. And we'll close down the grids exercise as well. This is part of another. This is actually part of a video that I'm making on creating one-sheeters or executive summaries. And you can watch that hopefully end of the day-ish. I don't know. Today is a crazy day for meetings. I did want to take a second to look at Luigi. Luigi's got an update here on his COVID-19 project case study. So he's working on this AI simulator for good, which is focused on refugee camps and tracking COVID-19 through the refugee camp space. So you've identified the problem. 7 million people are living in refugee-like conditions in camps. They're around the world lacking necessary support for response planning and advocacy efforts to acquire life-saving medical resources. Solution is to model the spread and create interactive web tools for NGO professionals to predict what they're up against. So this is supply forecasting, so they can plan, okay, what do we need and when do we need it? So you were playing basically the role of design and research. A lot of this is research focused. So you made a survey for NGO professionals. I am interested in this part. I shared my concerns with the team, and that the purpose of the survey for my purposes was to use it as a basis to form a research cohort that would lead a series of user interviews and participants for user testing. Following discussion with the subjects, I recommended questions that could remain in the survey, and some we may be able to remove, and if necessary. Although I thought the survey was still longer than I prefer, I was able to pare it down to a total of 28 questions. We agreed that it did not yield a sufficient number of responses and scheduled user interviews. And if it did not yield a sufficient number of responses, we could revise the survey. So there's a nice bit of collaboration going there. The survey was sent to 350 individuals. The survey resulted in 7 responses, and 5 respondents gave us permission. So this is interesting, and this is the nugget here. So you sent it out to 350 people, so you know what the response rate is. It's low single digits, like 2%. So you revise the survey, reduce the number of questions. Second survey was sent out. You chop the questions half, 28 to, well, not in half, but 28 to 16. That's 12, 40%. The survey was distributed, and the new version got 15 responses. So you have some experience here now in hand. Lower number of questions, double the responses. Okay. Now that response rate still isn't just fantastic. I'm not sure if you sent it to the same group of people, There could be, you could have sent it. A lot of this like depends on when it's sent. When do you hit the inbox? And it's global, so some of these people you're hitting the inbox like 2 in the morning. Some you're hitting it in 2 in the afternoon. Um, and then is it on a weekend? Like there's all sorts of variables around this data, so you can't just take it clean and say, oh, it's double. But on the raw, it went from 7 to 15. That's significant. Um, and I would write about that in my findings. At some point, I would point out what I learned. Well, having a chance to work with people who wanted a really long survey and putting out a survey that was half not quite half length, but significantly shorter, generated double the responses. So you have that, and again, the focus here is we're trying to build a cohort so we can talk to people. The survey itself is just a tester to see if these are the right people to talk to. It's an opt-in. So, survey results, data scientists, topics covered throughout the. Oh, sorry. So that was user interviews. Here's the topics that you covered. I am curious about general findings. I like to date we've conducted a total 9 interviews. The topics covered are this, but what are the what are the major themes that are coming back from the NGOs? Like we're completely overwhelmed. We're actually in a pretty good spot. Most of the NGOs aren't dealing with widespread cases, but Iraq and Pakistan are. I don't know. I don't know what the themes are. I can't even begin to guess. So I'd like to see something here about major findings. Competitive analysis. There are 10 different web apps that were recommended by the data modeling team. I like the fact that you get the data modeling team involved because they know where to point you. They are the experts in this space, and you have the opportunity to approach this as a non-user that's going to have to start using the tool. So I think it's a really good place to have a UX researcher jump in and go, okay, well, let's see how usable these things really are. The web apps providing modeling and metrics for healthcare providers, the general public, government agencies, and officials and businesses. They are focused on providing intelligence and data that enables impact. No tool currently available is focused specifically on refugee populations. Okay, so you're identifying, hey, I'm not able to test tools just like this one. I am able to extrapolate up a level and test tools that are in the realm of it. Overall, the apps I assessed were not intended for use by beginners and individuals with industry or modeling experience. One exception was COVID Act Now. The models has also been adapted by several countries around the world, including India. Stated purpose of the model is to help make decisions fast, not predict the future. It should be noted COVID Act Now is based on use on the map of states rather than and counties rather than an adjustable model that's being used by our modeling team. The use of maps is focused on educating decision makers and the public of the current state. Upon selecting a county, a state or county, users provide it with infection rate. So here's a lot about COVID Act Now, and it's kind of where you're at. I do think that you're going to probably want to boil down your like this is getting into a lot of detail on the competitive analysis. I think it's good to have. But I think you're probably going to want to boil down, and then I am interested on what's on the other side of it. But I'm still interested in the major themes that come out of the user interviews. I think you can boil down user survey as well. But the big thing here is the fact that you're collaborating with you're collaborating with, you have some you have some assets that you can point to. I think this is it paints a picture of somebody who's really involved from a research perspective on a project, and I think it's really well done. I know it's unfinished. I know there's work to do, but I think this is a really good start. And the important thing here is you can write at length when you are close to it. You're right in the middle of it. This is a great time to write a case study. What you don't want to do is wait 2 months, 3 months, and then you try to sit down and write the case study, and you're like, what did we do? You've got the details very, very easy to grab right now. So this is good. This is good. Even if you edit down, I think it's fine. And then Katie, you had some feedback here. You're waiting on a response from one, and then you responded to set up a call. I wanted to mention this. This is really where I would encourage you to set, you have a Calendly that you're using for your research, and if I can find my Calendly, whenever you have a calendar set up, it makes scheduling infinitely easier. You share your calendar with them. And you say, hey, just select the time that works for you. And then rather than playing the roundabout, like, oh, is 4 o'clock good on Tuesday? And they say, no, how about noon on Wednesday? Like, shortcut all that stuff. Just send them a link to your Calendly. Say, here's the times I have available. Select something that works for you. If nothing works for you, let me know, and then we'll do the round robin thing. Okay, but I would lean on Calendly to short circuit that. I will not schedule something with somebody else unless somebody has submitted their calendar so that I can see it or they can see mine, one way or another. And there I am. I'm frozen on screen. Okay. Yeah. Can I find my way back to OBS? I don't know where. Does OBS even exist anymore? It does, because here it is. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be the that was a decent feedback loop, but this is going to be a really busy day. So with 5 of you coming up in the next few hours, I will chat with most everybody who could be watching this. Well, not everybody who could be watching this. There's a lot of people over on YouTube. I get this thing gets like crazy views, and anyway, I will chat with a lot of you later. Okay, so for New Pragmatic, I'm Chris Courtney. This has been the Feedback Loop, and I'll see